The CAQ has laid out its rules for its leadership race, and what is very clear now is that the party might be looking for a new leader, but it is still Francois Legault's party. Tom Mulcair joins us. Hi, Tom.
Hey, good to be with you, Mitsumi.
So very quickly, before we get to the CAQ, I'd like your thoughts on what happened in Davos this week, Mark Carney's speech, what happens next?
Well, you put it exactly right, because that was Mark Carney's speech. He doesn't rely on speechwriters. He wrote that speech, and it reflected his deep thinking, and that's why people appreciate him so much and respect him so much, and why he got a very unusual and unique standing ovation at Davos. We're in very unique and dangerous times. Donald Trump, I think, is starting to show to everybody what some of us have suspected for a long time, is losing his marbles. And, 2 days ago, he was going to invade Greenland and take it because he could. And then yesterday he said, no, just kidding. Let the stock market go back up again. We shouldn't actually have that. And then today they were asking him, so what's the details of this so-called framework agreement? He hasn't got the slightest clue because he's making it up as he goes along. So I do think that the one thing that Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, said that makes the most sense is that Canada, the United States, and all of NATO has to do a better job in the Arctic because we've been neglecting it. That no one can disagree with.
Okay. So I want to get to Francois Legault now. Francois Legault spoke this week. It was the first time since he announced his resignation. Yep. It's clear the CAQ is his party.
Yes, he founded it, and he deserves credit. I mean, Mitsumi, you know the story. He created his own party and won 2 consecutive majorities. Quite a political feat, so let's give him credit for that. But now what he's doing is he's sticking his nose in the leadership race. Because what he's essentially saying is, well, I look at the candidates, they're all going to be in agreement with me on issues of identity. Really? Simon-Jolin Barrette is a right-wing ideologue who has delivered to Legault the very contentious, discriminatory legislation against religious minorities, the very contentious, discriminatory legislation against the English-speaking community of Quebec. And I point out a simple fact. When Legault went after McGill and Concordia, he said, oh, it was to help French in Montreal. So you're not supposed to question helping French in Montreal. But it turned out that the court said they had absolutely no proof of a connection between the cuts to McGill and Concordia and helping French in Montreal. Does that mean it's off limits to have that debate? I look at the wording of our finance minister. He was so smart yesterday saying, look, we've got to be able to talk about wanting a CAQ that is more open, more inclusive. So those are words that were interpreted by a lot of people in the CAQ. Oh, we don't like openness. We don't like inclusiveness. That sounds like the federal government. That's not us. We want to be closed-minded and narrow-minded. So I think that we've got to keep an eye on Christine Frechette. She's by far the best candidate in the leadership race. She's got great pedigree in terms of the economy and management, but she's more middle of the road. She quit the Parti Québécois at the time because she couldn't stand the so-called Charter of Values of Bernard Drinville, who might wind up being the third candidate.
Now, it's notable, too, that among the priorities that Francois Legault mentioned, he didn't mention education, healthcare, or the environment.
No, because those are all areas where he failed completely. And so he says, no, let's talk about the stuff that I want to talk about. The economy writ large, which doesn't really mean anything when you're failing and you've got a massive deficit. And then you look at the healthcare system falling apart. You look at the education system really going through tough times. And the environment, has been completely abandoned by the CAQ. So yeah, they don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about what he considers to be themes. But those are themes that interest maybe 15 or 20% of Quebecers. The rest of them want something different. So it's going to be interesting to watch whether the CAQ comes up with a credible candidate like Christine Frechette, who might be able to step into the shoes of Francois Legault and really bring that party back up, or they're going to try to become even more narrow and closed-minded and go with a right-wing ideologue like Simon-Jolin Barrette. One thing I do give them credit for, and I think it makes a lot of sense for them in this context, is to be a candidate. You need $30,000. That's chump change when you're doing fundraising. But you also need 15 signatures from sitting MNAs, either cabinet ministers or otherwise. That's very smart because you don't have a little committee looking at candidates saying, oh, no, this one's not part of us and blah, blah, blah. No. Simple objective thing. You rely on the people who have already been elected. Do you trust this person enough to put your name on their on their ballot to become candidates? And I think that it's going to be fun. Let's not forget one last thing, if I might, Mitsumi. April 12th. We don't just get a new leader of the CAQ, we get a new premier of Quebec. So the stakes are very high in this thing.
Okay. Thank you very much for this, Tom.
Good to be with you. All the best.